Hi everyone, and welcome back to Katapult's podcast on new episode, Are Digital Guest Journeys Delivering Success in Themed Attractions? And in this episode, we're joined by Ellen Kasinopoulou from Attractions.io and Robbie Jones from Katapult. We're talking surprise, delight, data, guest journeys, and all important advice for operators of theme parks and attractions. So listen in.
Yeah, so in terms of how guests are behaving digitally on site, I think we see two big trends. So the first is that they really start the digital behavior in a big way before they even get there. So 78% we see book online, even with smaller attractions where that's typically been kind of walk up to the gate. That kind of metric has grown massively in the past few years. And then when they get on site, they're really looking at ways to have as much fun as possible, connect with their loved ones, simplify the functional elements of the guest journey so that they can actually go ahead and have that great experience without worrying about some of the things that have historically maybe caused a little bit of friction. So in the research that we did, 60% of guests told us that they do want to use an app when they're on site. And then that was actually followed by wanting to have digital ticketing and wanting to have payments taken by mobile. So you really see a big trend for those kind of functional benefits so that they can go away and have a great time. I think in the best solution, they go really hand in hand. So obviously we want people to come with great concepts, great theming. And when we're thinking about the way that kind of digital touch points are weaved into the journey, it's just going to feel so much more natural if that is all aligned and part of that branded experience. So something that we think a lot about is kind of how can we add little moments of enjoyment into the apps themselves to really foster that authentic feel. So things like having the map sparkle if it's Christmas and snow, and just really like bring it to life. And I think there's so much opportunity to do that and take some of the tools that might otherwise be very functional in their kind of need to something that is really embedded in the guest journey and really actually exciting in a way.
The guest experience with digital is quite an interesting relationship, something that we picked up looking at the behaviour of theme park superfans, as we call them, so 200 Americans that visit multiple theme parks every year. It's interesting to see that they need their mobile phones to get around. They want to take photos, they want to take videos, they want wayfinding to be easy, they want a frictionless experience. But at the same time, what we're seeing is that we're losing them to the rest of the content that's on their phones. So one of the things that kind of broke my heart a little bit was that around 20% of people were answering work emails in a theme park setting. That could have been in a queue line, that could have been, walking around the theme park. But if there's one thing that I think we all want from attractions is that we want that escapism. We want that ability to step outside of the real world, focus on our family, and make sure that we're enjoying every single moment and thematic element and live experience and amazing roller coaster that we're allowed to ride on. Right now, in some cases, mobiles are hindering that experience if people are spending too much time on their devices. But as with many of these things, there's always a balance to find between making sure the experience is amazing but offering a frictionless experience at the same time. A really good example of attractions, I guess, trying to control the use of technology is someone like Secret Cinema, who are actively taking phones off people or putting them in pockets to make sure that they are fully immersed in the show that they're seeing in front of them. The problem with that is that you are losing safety and security that a mobile phone gives us in day-to-day life, and there will be points where people need to take an emergency phone call. And I guess it comes down to a debate again as to what's more important, to take a phone away from someone so they're immersed in a world, or to take it away from them and make them feel incredibly insecure in a place they don't know. And this is throughout society. We spend lots of time on our phones. We're reliant on them for many things. 10,000 messages and adverts come to our eyes every single day through those devices. So there is a real need, I guess, from a society perspective to step away from the screen. And I think we're seeing trends towards that. But they're so inextricably linked to the way that we live that simply taking them out of the hands of our guests isn't the answer.
I was going to jump. I don't know if you guys were listening to the news today, but in the UK news, they're obviously talking about Australia considering banning social media for young people on the phone. And I think that has a really nice tie into this because it is a global phenomenon, essentially, that's almost front of mind for everyone is how do we strike the balance between, for adults and young people, really, not just young people, but how do we strike the balance between them being on a device in a healthy way and in a way that it doesn't kind of take over their real life experience, which is essentially what we're saying here. We're actually talking about something that's hyper real and hyper immersive beyond, what's happening in everyday life. And if we're still struggling with the attention span to be absorbed in those really engaging experiences, it does kind of pose a question as to how we handle it. I think one of the things that we are super conscious of at Attractions.io is obviously we actually don't want people to be dwelling on the phone. We don't measure dwell time at all as a success metric of our platform. We think about it more as what's the most efficient way of actually like aiding the guests to get to where they need to be and then almost loop them back in to the experience. So can we send them a notification that lets them know that something is about to happen like 5 meters away from where they are? And if we can refocus their attention and really like get them back into the moment. So I think you kind of have it going full circle, but if we're mindful of how we, create the digital experiences, I think we can do something really great instead of just have this, young and old people head down in a queue, not really engaging. So when we think about what a successful kind of digital experience would look like on site, I mean, we would always say take it back to your guests and your guest journey because everywhere is slightly different. So I think a key piece of work that we do if we are onboarding a new client is actually asking them to complete a guest journey map and walk us through what the peaks and pits of that guest journey really look like, so that they've got a basis for identifying where a tool like ours could actually come in and help versus them just wanting to do something because it's trendy or because it's, the latest buzz thing in the industry. And then beyond that, in terms of what we see them wanting, it really comes down to 3 things. So you have the kind of functional levers that eliminate friction, and that includes things like pass ticketing that they can just scan through a turnstile and enter straight away instead of having to actually, stand there for sometimes 45 minutes at the beginning of the day. I actually had a conversation with Magnolia Gardens a few weeks ago. So they're based out in the States, quite a small institution, but beautiful garden, big historical element to the way that they're trying to educate people about their kind of colonial past as well. So you've got that dual focus. And because it's so complex and, so in depth, the experience that you get there, people at the cashier were literally spending half an hour taking individual buyers through everything that they needed to know about their visit. So, even before they'd started, I know, and it's because they're really passionate about what they're doing and they love it and they want people to fully understand what's on offer. But if you imagine, busy autumn day, because I think that's their kind of peak season, big queue, you're doing that for every guest, is, that's a pit before you've even started if you don't address it. So you want to have things that really speed it up. So you've got admissions, you've got, not waiting in line, being able to understand where queues are long, being able to skip them if that's important to you and pay for the pass at, just a tap of the button. And wayfinding is the other big one. So one of the things that did come out of our recent research was that guests are really still interested in better wayfinding, and operators have moved on from thinking about it as an area. So we have, got native app maps, we've got maps hosted on the web now, and people kind of think that's done and dusted. But there's so much more that we could do to make it immersive. There's so much more with AI that we could do to help people get there faster. It's really not one and done. So that's the first thing. The second thing is actually just around helping them have a great day. So one of the really interesting things that came out of the report that I think we were maybe not expecting was a preference for surprise and delight experiences. So guests they want the functional benefits, but they also want operators to start doing something, a little bit spicy and a little bit extra to really brighten up their day. And I think that includes, sending them a little offer if they've been 3 times in the last 6 months and you know that they love this restaurant, so you can go ahead and send them that offer. It might be letting them know that you're going to upgrade them on one ride and giving them the fast pass. But people are really excited about that, and I think it's not something that's maybe being fully explored yet. I think that the first thing that operators can do with technology like ours, but also lots of the services that are available now, have really in-depth analytics platforms that actually power that tool. So before they do anything, I would recommend that people really get stuck into the analytics, understand what your segments want, actually understand what your segments are if you don't already know that, and break that down into their behaviors, because you can do that. So you might say, okay, I want to see how guests with 2 children feel about their visit. So you go away and you look at that segment, and then you're like, okay, I see that their experience dips off when they get to lunchtime. Lunchtime is a really stressful time. If you've got 2 kids, they're probably in a really long queue. The kids are not sure what they want to eat, then they don't eat it at all, and they've got this whole loop of things that might go on. And you might see that through things like abandoned carts can be one. So you see that people kind of put something in their basket and then they don't check it out. And if you know that and you start to unpick the different parts of the guest journey in that way, you can then obviously be really targeted with how you respond to it. And the nice thing with a tool like ours is that it obviously provides the data from the upfront, but also then gives you the mechanism to go away and influence that behavior so that it becomes a more positive part of the experience. So you might send them a meal deal for a slightly earlier time in the day. So maybe you say that the window is between 12 and 1 because you know that that's got less footfall. You send them a kids eat free meal deal, and all of a sudden they've had a much more peaceful experience in the restaurant. Parents might have added some extra things to the basket, because we also see that that goes up when people use a mobile checkout, and that experience is just turned around. So I think first and foremost it's using data, and then it's using messaging, using heat maps to understand footfall if you can kind of do that, and really combining those elements together to think about how you address a certain problem.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that's fantastic in terms of understanding guests. That's something from an insights perspective we're absolutely driven on. Psychographics, instead of demographics, what's the psychographics of your guests? What are their attitudes? What are their interests? What are their values? And so often we see a really clear correlation between not just understanding the psychographics to get people to come to the attraction in the first place, but as you said, Ellen, how you get them to behave in the attraction to provide them with an even better experience than what they would have had without your support. So there is so much value in really digging down into those market segments, audience data, attitudes, interests, values. Just so important to understand the guests that come through the door. I think it's really interesting the amount of data that will become available to attractions over the next few years. The rise of AI is obviously going to do a lot of the hard number crunching, but there's always going to be a need to disseminate what that information is trying to tell you. And if anything, this year we've seen 2 trends that have kind of come into the leisure industry that are human-centric in some form. So 2 things that aren't necessarily data-driven. The first is that from our trends report at the start of the year, we saw that human connection is becoming more and more important. People want to speak to another person. They want to see the whites of people's eyes. And even though there are technologies such as robots with iPads where you can check into theme parks and things, there is an ability to answer what guests want from an efficiency perspective with technology like that, but also from an emotional human perspective as well, with an actual face and a person to talk to. And the second thing, and the second trend we've seen this year, is around spontaneity. Now, we are living in a fast-paced environment with AI that doesn't quite yet be able to forecast sort of spontaneous moments that may happen within parks. They happen all the time, whether it's someone falling over and you need to get, an emergency services there. It might be a ride breaking down when you didn't know it was going to happen, or it might be a impromptu singer or busker in the middle of the rides that just give a performance that gathers people around. That spontaneity is human integral, and it's helping to drive a real need for people that want something that's not necessarily advertised within theme parks, and other attractions. And I think, Instagram, social media, you can do point of view walkthroughs of pretty much every attraction you can think of on YouTube. And because we are so well taught about what's there in the first place, to be able to bring something that is completely random to the atmosphere changes the experience for the better. So I feel like data is going to drive like the nuts and bolts of what we think the guest experience is going to be like, but there's always going to be that pang of human intelligence that's required to make the best experiences in the future.
I think it's human creativity as well, isn't it? Because it's one of the things that I think AI isn't brilliant at yet is being creative. And you see that if you ask it to kind of write you something, it gets you half of the way there, and then you have to do a lot of wordsmithing to get it up to par. And I think it's going to be a little while before it can grasp the real emotional value of an experience and like how that really makes you feel. And obviously that's something that we still need people to be deeply involved in. We really use our research and our commissioned research to get a sense of where both guests' minds are at and operators, and then see if that aligns. And one of the things that I think has come out on the guest side quite clearly is that people have this craving for a super personalized, really unique experience that maybe is slightly different from the last time that they went ahead and visited that same attraction. So one of the ways that we are addressing this is we're about to launch a new AI assistant at the IAPA Expo. And what it does is really follow you across the guest journey so that it deeply understands what you're interested in, and it responds in a really sophisticated way because it's able to take all of those touch points in from across the guest journey and then tailor the response to you. So if you're a mum with two young kids and you're trying to figure out where the best pizza place for them is, if you type in like where is the best pizza place nearby, it will just give you 3 recommendations with kids menus, and it will tell you, which one has the highest ratings with families of that age, instead of you having to go ahead and like root through loads of maps. So I think that's one way or one example of how we take that through to product development. So I think we just take those nuggets of inspiration from the research to really go into product development and make sure that even our core product is still aligned with what guests are asking for, what operators are asking for, and really just bridging that gap.
And I think what's really interesting about that from a customer experience point of view is we're seeing it from a design perspective as well. We're seeing that actually there is a need not just to make sure the attraction is immersive, but you can come time and time again and you can see something different, or you can come with a different friend or a different family member and they'd still get an equally amazing experience. It's kind of making the attractions amazing for everybody, but still amazingly focused on what people want at the same time. And I think now at a point where there's even more demand from guests in terms of how much value they get from their money. Experiences are becoming the go-to thing for gifts again for maybe the 3rd or 4th or 5th year running. People see the value of experiences, but their expectations are gradually increasing. So the ability to integrate technology where it's needed, amazing design where it's needed, is ultimately going to create a customer experience that people are going to love and come back to time and time again.
Yeah. My recommendations for operators who are starting to think about maybe how they would want to enhance the certainly digital guest experience in 2025 would be go back to your guests first and foremost, see what they want. Our research has shown that typically, even though they have a preference for certain technologies or certain kind of touch points in the guest journey, they're quite often feeling like that's not really being met right now. So, only 30% are having a great experience with digital technology on site, and that is a really small percentage. But 63% of them are telling us that they would come back more, pay more, and likely have increased loyalty to the operator if we were able to smooth out some of these touch points and experiences. So I would start with them and really kind of do the work to understand what they need. And then I would strategically look at what you're doing to make sure that where you add technology, it's really at a point in the guest journey where it's going to either elevate that experience or minimize some source of friction. So we don't want to be kind of weaving digital touch points in for no reason, because as we said earlier, that would most likely detract from the experience that they're having, and we want to keep them very present and in the moment. But I think done at the right moment, you can have a really powerful impact in actually helping them to stay focused on the things that matter most when they visit. That would be kind of my advice. I don't know what yours would be, Robbie, if you want to take the mic.
Yeah, very, very similar. I think operators really need to dig down into the psychographics of guests even more. There's never been more data and information about what people's attitudes and interests and values are. And I think that stems to their behaviour and their balance that they expect from a technology perspective and a guest experience perspective as well. When is best to give people the license to use their phones for wayfinding. If you're seeing that there's lots of people that are using queue lines to answer work emails, then maybe there's something operationally wrong that can't be solved with technology. Maybe you need more rides. Maybe you need more of an immersive queue line. Or maybe you just need to somehow solve society's problem that's got an addiction to mobile phones. I'm not too sure which is the easiest one out of those. But yeah, we know that finding the balance between technology and humans is the most important thing. And I guess that can only be done by really, really and truly understanding the people that visit your attraction. Really amazing idea that I'd love to see come to fruition is, this idea of augmented reality overlay. It's already kind of progressed, but the biggest issue I find is wayfinding in some capacity, and the ability to have real-time directions so I know where the hell I'm going. And knowing that the queue line that I'm going to join is actually what the numbers tell me is brilliant. And I also kind of want hidden things as well. What's those Easter egg moments of characters popping out of shrubs that you didn't expect? And the fact that you could wear something, or maybe it's implanted in our heads, or maybe not that. But if you could see yeah, but if you could see everything as a group, as your family or your peers or your friends, whoever you're going with, to be able to experience something together which is secretly hidden at the same time as well, I think would just be absolutely magical for me and my family.
I think that's really cool. It's like basically you want an experience that is crafted to you and a little bit unique and maybe special versus what everybody else gets. Mine sounds really boring compared to that, but I'm more of a zoo lover than a kind of thrill-seeking roller coaster rider. And I have never seen the puma at Chester Zoo, like in my life. So I was born like 20 minutes from Chester Zoo, and I have never seen that thing. So I think one of my dreams would just be to have something that told me exactly when the puma was going to, rear its head and let me get over there as fast as humanly possible. So I'm hoping that maybe we could do that ourselves with the app, but to guarantee that I would see like my favorite animals would be the dream. Because like I say, I'm a very local, very frequent visitor, and it's a challenge.
Oh, I wonder if there's like a drone company that attaches binoculars that would make it a lot easier for you to find the puma.
I think that there are some companies that can do it with lasers. So I think it is technically possible to have a laser that triggers if the animal comes out, but it's figuring all of that out in the back end of the system and then having it notify you that I think is yet to be done. Um,
If there's any one takeaway from this podcast, it needs to be you need to see the puma.
Humor, just as who can come and get me, No one wakes up. Yeah, I think that would just be awesome.
Come on, come on.